Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning into another episode. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and wow, how about those Minnesota Lynx? We're sitting here after the impressive weekend on Maya Moore night, a Maya Moore kind of weekend. You could say the Lynx Legends weekend, whatever you want to call it. But we're sitting here on the morning after, or the day after. And it was an impressive weekend, an impressive, really 3-game stretch for the Minnesota Lynx. Really, it's been an impressive 5-game stretch out of the break for the Minnesota Lynx. But the Lynx ended up taking down Las Vegas in 2 games in 3 nights, and then capped it off on Maya Moore night, beating Indiana and clinching a playoff berth. But this team has been playing outstanding. Napheesa Collier has been playing on another level. She has turned her game up to another level. MVP, very, very, very strong case for MVP, and we can maybe start calling her MVP, which is one of my favorite things to do. But it's been impressive to see Minnesota, what they've been able to do, and against the quality of competition and opponents that they've been able to do it against. So that it's impressive to see what this team has done as of late, and they're hitting their stride here down the stretch of the regular season. We're sitting here about 10 games left of the regular season. The playoffs start in mid-September, or kind of a little bit towards the end of September. But Minnesota is looking like a top 3 seed, could potentially be number 2, depending on what shakes out between them and Connecticut. But it'll be interesting to see what happens down the stretch. But this team is playing great basketball at the best possible time of the season. So it's been a joy to watch, and it's been fun to see not only Lynx fans showing out support, seeing Target Center rocking and packed like it was, especially on the Saturday night game when Maya Moore's jersey retirement took place. It's fun to be a Lynx, fun time to be a Lynx fan, fun time to be a WNBA fan, and this is one of the best times of the year. So enjoy the rest of the regular season. Enjoy the playoffs when it does arrive, but it's been a joy to watch, and it will continue to be that way. But this week, I'm very excited to be joined by a guest who is joining the podcast for the first time. He does a great job in covering the Lynx for the Next. A lot of you are probably familiar with him and in the work that he does at the Next. He's one of the best follows that you can have on social media. He does incredible work. You follow all of his written work at the Next, but that's none other than Terry Horstman. And Terry, I've known Terry for a few years now. Haven't had him on the podcast yet, but Terry does, like I said, he does a phenomenal job of covering the Lynx, covering basketball, and he's incredibly knowledgeable. So we talked a little bit about what's taken place, the action-packed weekend that I just mentioned at Target Center. And then we kind of look at different aspects of this team, talk about Napheesa Collier, a little bit of Cheryl Reeve, and then we also look at the rest of the regular season and what might take place for this team in the postseason, and if they are legit title contenders. So it was a great conversation with Terry. I'm really excited to have him on the podcast for the first time. It will not be the last time. But Terry's great, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. So without further ado, let's jump right into the podcast with Terry Horstman. Terry, how are you doing, man?
I am doing really well. Morning after a pretty impressive back-to-back wins for the Lynx here. So
Yeah.
It was a very fun and a little bit exhausting weekend at Target Center, but I am not Napheesa Collier, and I didn't play 38 minutes one night to play 35 minutes the next night. So
yeah,
no complaining about being tired here, but yeah, definitely spent a lot of time Target Center this weekend. And but yeah, it was a really fun weekend and a great weekend if you're a Lynx fan.
absolutely.
Can't imagine it going better than that.
Absolutely. Before we jump right into all things Lynx, if you could just, people should be following you, but if they're not, if you could just tell people where they can follow you and follow your work.
For sure. Yeah, I am on Twitter at Terry Horstman, just my name, TerryHorstman. And I cover the Lynx for the Next, with this amazing women's basketball publication that I'm lucky enough to be a part of. We're covering women's basketball, all day, every day, every we have a beat reporter for every conference, every college league, and then one per WNBA team as well. So you can follow the Next at the Next Hoops, and thenexthoops.com, and that's where you can find my Lynx coverage.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you do. I speak for a lot of people, I think, in saying you do a great job in covering the Lynx in the league, and just all of your work is fun to follow along. So I appreciate everything you do, and it's been fun following all of your work. So
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mitchell, and likewise.
well, thank you. Well, you kind of talked about it. Let's jump right into what we just saw. We're recording the morning after My Moore's jersey retirement night. It was, like you mentioned, an action-packed weekend. Not only
Yeah.
with the amount of people at Target Center, but the action we saw on the court. But I mean, you were there for both games. What were your impressions on the weekend as a whole, and just kind of what we saw both on and off the court for the Lynx?
Yeah, there are definitely no shortage of storylines. Even at post game presser last night, oftentimes we'll just get right into it and start asking questions. But Cheryl talked a little bit first and asked us where we wanted to start. We want to talk about the game, talk about the ceremony. There wasn't enough, time to talk about everything we wanted to talk about. But I think honestly, this was a pretty big statement weekend for the Lynx on the court, and just considering who was in town night one, the two-time defending champions who came in mad immediately
Mhm.
after the Lynx beating them on their home floor again. So that's pretty impressive that they were able to withstand that counterpunch. And then Indiana, where I think probably the most disappointing or frustrating loss of this season was that first game against Indiana. Um, it's always frustrating when you lose a game at home and at least half of the
Mhm.
stadium is cheering for your opponent, which that's the first time that's happened for the
Yeah.
Lynx in Target Center. I think it's happened to the Timberwolves a handful of times
Yep.
over the years, but that's new territory for the Lynx, and I know a lot of Lynx fans who were mad about that, and I don't think whether you have fear or not in a game like that when you had a lead in the fourth quarter and let it get away, it's not fun. So the on-court thing is honestly what I'm most impressed about, or I think is something we just shouldn't lose sight of, where we talk about these legends who are in the building, and great to catch up with them. And this franchise has done such a tremendous job over the years of keeping players connected, making sure that Lynx culture is the first and foremost
Mhm.
thing on everyone's minds, which is great. But every week that goes by, we're kind of you're looking at national media covering the WNBA who are still kind of just talking about the Liberty and the Aces and giving maybe a throwaway mention to the Connecticut Sun out of respect. And I think this weekend is the first weekend where you can say this team can win the title this
Mhm.
year, and it shouldn't surprise anybody. It's not going to be easy, but I think just because Indiana is a difficult matchup for them as well from a basketball standpoint, like Aaliyah Boston is a problem, and I think they maybe figured some of that out in this game we saw last night. So
Mhm.
it's a tough ask to play those two games back to back with a lot of other energy in the building, and just the professionalism that the Lynx displayed in just taking care of business in
Mhm.
both games was really impressive. And I think, it was fitting that last night clinched their spot in the playoffs, because I
Right.
think, the sky is the limit for this team. And I think last night became the night where it's like, you really can't say otherwise. Like, this team is in the conversation.
Yeah, I was actually just texting with somebody the other night after the Vegas game, so the first night of the back-to-back, and that obviously was the second straight game in 3 days that Minnesota beat Las Vegas. First one being in Vegas, the Wednesday prior, and then in Minnesota. And the person I was texting with, him and I, we've agreed that this team is obviously talented and could make a run in the postseason. But the one thing that he said to me right when we were texting after the game, he's like, I think that this team is right there with New York, and I
Yeah.
agree now. I mean, this team has always been talented. I mean, everybody knows that they've been top three in the league most of the year.
Right.
But this statement that they made in the last three games, I mean, you could say, the Washington games, whatever, like that's, Washington's
Sure.
not great, but what they've been able to do against, Vegas in back-to-back games against them, 2 and 3 nights, and then against Indiana, it's impressive, and to be able to, the most impressive thing to me is back to back is it obviously it's tough. It is tough to play back to back and have energy that second night, but The thing with this team, we've seen it all year long, and we saw it against Indiana, is the Lynx just when another team makes a push or the opponent makes a push, the Lynx have, whether it's Kayla McBride, Bridget Carlton, Napheesa Collier playing phenomenal, but they have pieces that step up in key moments and they get themselves that gap again.
Yeah.
And to me, that's more impressive because that's what matters in the postseason. You're going to have close games. You're going to come down to the wire. You need those moments where you kind of create some room and pull out in front of somebody. But that to me has been the most impressive
Sure.
thing. And they're playing their best basketball at the best possible time, which is great, and which is with less than a month left in the regular season. So it's been a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Been a lot
And
of
I
fun.
would just add to that too, for things that matter in the playoffs. Like I think Reeve is doing a tremendous coaching job as
Hmm.
well during the
Yes.
stretch. And I think I haven't gone back and just like dissected the play by play, like the order of things happen in each of these last 5 games, but you've seen in each of these games since we've come back from the break, maybe not a huge lead at halftime, maybe like a second quarter that ended with a bit of a whimper. And I think it's in all 5 games, there's been a Lynx run immediately in the third quarter,
Yep.
a frustration timeout. Both games, Becky Hammond called a timeout within the first 2.5 minutes on Wednesday night and Friday night, and you could just see her shout expletives and
Mhm.
like throw a clipboard. Even like not, it's not like it was a crazy 15-1 run or anything like that, but just like 6-0 run and 8-2 run, and that happened. We saw that last night and the night before. So I think they've they've shown tremendous the abilities to make adjustments
Yes.
during breaks. Like I think they're pretty good out of the timeout usually, but I've really noticed like first 2 minutes of the third quarter they've done a tremendous job in just taking control of the tempo, playing the game on their terms, and like throwing that first punch in the second half,
Yeah.
so that the rest of the game, they're not the ones chasing. They're the ones being chased, and
Hmm.
can even pad the lead even further. So
Yeah.
I also think both the last of the 2 games felt a lot closer than they actually were.
Yeah.
It's the WNBA. A 10-point lead can disappear in a second, but you kind of look at it, and I wouldn't say it's comfortable or easy at any point, but the Lynx were in control.
Hmm.
They didn't have like some furious rally or like lucky, desperation shot at the buzzer. Like they've been just like the team in front between like 5 to 13 points the whole way. And that's another thing that great teams do.
Right. No, absolutely. It back to your point about Cheryl Reeve too. She does deserve a lot of credit for what she's been able to do this year, as well as the rest of the coaching staff. Not only maneuvering this roster, but molding them and kind of blending them together immediately. It's credit to the players and their personalities, but what she's been able to do, and we've seen it in years past. I mean, countless years in her time in Minnesota, where she has figured things out on the fly. And she is the best adjuster, both in game and in season, that is in the WNBA in my mind, and
Great.
maybe the best we've ever seen. And she deserves a lot of credit. I know a lot of people like to harp on her and what she does throughout the year or says throughout the year, but she, in my mind, is not only one of the best ever, but she should be coach of the year this year in my
Yeah,
eyes, that for the job that she's done.
for sure. I agree with that.
When looking back, kind of talking about the weekend again, not only what we saw on the court, but the crowds. I mean, the
Yeah.
crowds at Target Center. I mean, we think about now. Granted, the Saturday night game was Maya Moore's jersey retirement, so that
Mhm.
part of it was because of that, but part of it was also because of Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. But seeing 19,000 plus in Target Center again, seeing that place rocking, seeing it loud.
Yeah.
Not only that game, but also the Las Vegas game. I mean,
Yeah.
what was it? Um, the combined, this was a stat from Lynx PR, that combined Friday night and Saturday night attendance versus Las Vegas and Indiana, nearly 30,000 people were at Lynx games,
Right.
which is insane. But what do you think of, or what were your thoughts on just the crowd, not only this
Mhm.
weekend, but also maybe the crowd and the attention that the Lynx are getting this year?
Yeah, it's I think it's been great and it's building. And for the folks who made the short trip up from Iowa to see Caitlin Clark, I think
Hmm.
it also helped that Kate Martin was playing on Friday night. But hey, there's a pretty good WNBA team playing basketball here, even when they're not playing
Hmm.
against Iowa Hawkeyes. So just keep making that drive up. it's a it's a fun team to be around. I know there are not too many home games left, but it's awesome, and I do think we're seeing WNBA greater WNBA media pay more attention to this team. I think like people like Rebecca Lobo has been high on the Lynx all
Mhm.
year and has used these last few performances to talk even more highly of the Lynx. But yeah, Target Center with that energy, is awesome, and I
Mhm.
do think a lot of people we're there for Caitlin Clark and to cheer for the Indiana Fever, but also a lot of people there for great basketball, and there
Right.
was a ton of great basketball. So the building was energetic. It was great to be, in Minneapolis. I live just across the river in Northeast, and like the Twins playing at the same time,
Mhm.
makes parking a little bit difficult. I know you had a little bit of
Yeah, I was almost
parking.
waiting for
Yeah,
about an hour to
it was
get
it
into
was
a
kind
spot.
of a saga, right? But yeah, just downtown Minneapolis has been pretty alive this summer, just with the Lynx playing like this. The Twinkies have been been doing good as well,
Yeah.
and often yes. So it was just like this is why we cover the sport
Hmm.
to like be at like fun events and around the energy that the fans bring. So it was everything you want. 30,000 people in the Target Center back to back nights, and shout out to the staff. I know they t-shirted.
Yeah.
You probably weren't there in time to see this because this was before they even opened it up for fans.
Hmm.
But there was the black Maya Moore number 23 t-shirt on every single seat in the arena, and normally that would have been done the day before but it couldn't have been done the day before because they had a
They
game
had
the
a
day
game.
before.
Yep.
So shout out to the entire Lynx staff, from sales to marketing.
Hmm.
There's community relations events in conjunction with the games as well. Everyone deserves the nap that they're getting today,
Yeah.
and I hope it's not a home game for a while now, so I hope they're all getting Monday off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so well orchestrated from the function of the game operation standpoint too, and I didn't hear of anything going wrong at any point. So even Target Center security and ushers had their hands full with getting that many people in and out,
Hmm.
getting people seated. It was just so like well done, and just such a fun couple of nights to
Yeah.
be a part of.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It was, Saturday night was it felt like a playoff game. And
Mm-hmm.
it brought me back to the 2017 years when it was
Yeah.
absolutely packed to the top, and rocking, and it's a lot of fun, and hopefully fans continue to show out, not just Iowa fans, but Minnesota fans and any
Yeah.
other fan that wants to come watch the
I,
Lynx.
it,
It's a
it'll be great for the bottom line, but I don't know how it's going to be for me,
yeah,
just selfishly, if these teams match up in the first round of the
yeah,
playoffs. If
yeah,
I have if just been flanked in press row by Iowa fans who um who have opinions and they express them passionately, and
yeah,
I'm a fan of their right to do that, but you know just
yeah,
it's hard, it's impossible to not eavesdrop and hear all the very thoughtful advice they're giving to the officials. So
yep, yep,
but I'm
absolutely.
sure Target Center and downtown Minneapolis will make a lot of money if this if this is the first round matchup. It would be
Yeah.
electric.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I think any team that faces Indiana will be happy to host them in the first round of the
yeah,
playoffs.
yeah,
So
they travel well, so shout out to them.
yes, absolutely. Speaking of playoffs, obviously we're sitting here about 10. Well, we are 10 games left
Yeah.
in the regular season for the Lynx, which is kind of hard to believe. But Minnesota's sitting at entering the week as people are hearing this podcast. They're entering 22-8.
Yep.
And they're half game back of Connecticut, well within shouting distance, 3 games back of New York, even for the top spot. Where do you think the Lynx might end up landing? Looking, 10 games left in the regular season. You mentioned that they have a heavy road schedule within
Mhm.
that 10 game span or compared to home games, but you think they could inch up to that number 2 spot, or do you think they're kind of sitting pretty at number 3?
I wouldn't be surprised, and you know Cheryl and the team is only going to talk about the game in front of them, but
Hmm.
it's up to us to do this mental gymnastics of matchups. I think they could, and also it's maybe a little early to be scoreboard watching, but another team that was playing a back to back during this Lynx back to back were the Connecticut Sun,
Hmm.
and they survived a pretty good shot from Chicago in Connecticut. It looked like at least from the the score standpoint, that Chicago was going to win that game. I wasn't able to watch because the Lynx game was starting as that
Yeah.
game was taking place, and then they beat the Liberty the next night. So Connecticut loses one or both of those games, the Lynx are already in the second spot. I do think the third to last and second to last game of the year will be a road trip that involves games at Connecticut and at New York. I think I just got the order of that backwards. I think they play the Liberty first, but those games will be exciting and telling. And New York may have the one seed locked up at
Hmm.
that point, but maybe they don't, and that would be a pretty big battle for positioning. And then the Lynx come home and finish with the Sparks for the last game of the season, and you expect them to handle business in that scenario.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think catching New York for a one seed is maybe a little too
Hmm.
much to ask. But then I think you don't want to overlook the first round opponent. But if it's if it's chalk and the top teams advance, it would be Lynx Connecticut in the second round, and I think Connecticut's probably the most difficult matchup for this team. It's
Yeah.
the one team they haven't beaten in the league this year.
Hmm.
They came close in both games. They came close, and I not to harp on officiating, but they were just the victims of a pretty tough call late in that first game,
Yeah.
way back in May between these two teams, and then
Hmm.
second game they lose at home in the game that Fee got hurt, and they only lost by 5 and playing without Fee down the stretch, which is admirable, but
Right.
just how tough and physical Connecticut is. Connecticut's a tough matchup for anybody who plays them, but that's where home court advantage in that matchup could be the thing
Hmm.
that turns the tide. So it will be just a half game back with one quarter of the season left to play. I think this will be a real scintillating stretch run for both teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up at 2, and
Yeah.
then you get to start having conversations from a basketball standpoint, like, well, is it better to be the 3 seed and play Phoenix or the 2 seed and play Indiana if it stays that way? But I think it's a little too early for the if and or but kind of
Hmm.
analysis of playoff positioning.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they moved up, and even if they caught New York, it'd be a little wild. But like, what can't this team do
Hmm.
at this point? And they've beaten New York twice when they've played them this year.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see because I'm just looking at their schedule here. They obviously play, well, the last 3 games of the year, or within that last 3 game stretch, they play at New York, at Connecticut. It'll be interesting to
right,
see at that time where those teams are, if they're, farther away from each other, if they have enough, distance between each other. Maybe we don't see, some of the players play or not play as heavy of minutes. But we could see those games being deciders too in
yeah,
what takes place, and kind of not really necessarily tiebreakers, because like you mentioned, the Connecticut owns the tiebreaker over Minnesota with what they've been able to do this season against the Lynx. But if they're tied in the standings at that point, it'll be interesting to see what it could come right down to the wire for playoff
yeah,
seeding, and well, especially that 2-3 matchup. But it I agree though that I do think that Connecticut is the toughest matchup for Minnesota. Minnesota's played
yeah,
New York really well. Actually,
yeah,
they now New York's hitting their stride well at the end of the year, like Minnesota is. But Minnesota and New York, that's been a fun matchup, and Minnesota matches up well with New York. So
right,
if that ends up being a matchup, I would be very intrigued with that, in what might take place. But I do think that probably the hardest matchup. Now you can't look, like you said, can't look beyond, the first round opponent. But the toughest
right,
matchup for me is definitely Connecticut. They've had Minnesota's number this year.
right,
Um, but the other thing is too, the Lynx, compared to Connecticut, have a much easier schedule. Maybe not much easier, but they have an easier schedule. And I was just looking at the strength of schedule, of over the remaining games, and Minnesota has like the third easiest remaining schedule, New
right.
York being the second easiest. So that's
Mm,
something that could play into effect, or come into effect, or play a factor down the stretch too. in the fact that Connecticut has a little bit of a tougher schedule. I think they're about middle of the way through the league with
Right.
strength of schedule.
A
So
couple of those games making it easier for the Lynx though are a little sneaky. One
yeah,
of those games that makes it easier is at Dallas,
yes,
who have just had a tough season in a lot of ways. And I know the Lynx won't be playing at Dallas in a noon start time on the heels of winning the Commissioner's Cup and
hmm
probably still washing the champagne out of the jerseys a little bit. So that'll be different, but they did lose at Dallas. And
hmm
another game too that I think probably in that form of analytics isn't making it easier would be the at Atlanta Dream, who are pushing, not going to push, are pushing Chicago for the last
hmm
spot in the playoffs. So let's see, that game in Atlanta is on September 10th. So about 4 or 5 games from
hmm
now, if they're still in it, like that is like full on relentless mode for them
right.
if they can, still get into the playoffs.
hmm
So these, teams that are further down the standings, there still might be a couple big counter punches for them
Yeah.
to take and move past. So
It always seems like too we're watching towards the end of the season. We have about that 2, 3, 4 seeds are always
mhm.
fighting for positioning. Obviously, they're making the playoffs, but then we have this usually about 7, 8 spots that come down to the final day or
Yeah,
two or final few games, which makes it fun. I mean, that's fun
going
for
into the
fans
break,
to
it looked like we had our 8 teams, and then
yeah.
Atlanta just came back and they've played really well. And
hmm
it's like people are forgetting how good of a basketball player Tina Charles is and how
Yes.
good Ryan Howard is. And everyone should remember how amazing Alicia Gray was on
hmm
Friday night at the All-Star game. So yeah, Atlanta, them not fading, I think is great because I love a good old-fashioned battle for the last seed in
Yeah.
the playoffs.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely interesting down the standings, and then couple 2, 3 teams that are thinking about lottery
Right.
ping pong balls and stuff. But that's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's part of it. So
Right, exactly. You kind of talked about out of the break how Atlanta is one of the hottest, or kind of turned things around and kind of is making a push now.
Mhm.
The Lynx are,
Right,
there's stress, spanning back to right before the break when they won, going into the break. They've won what, 6 straight, five
yep,
5-0 out of the break. They're playing outstanding. What has stood out to you over this, maybe let's say the 5 game span, coming
yeah.
out of the break?
I don't think there's enough that can be said about Napheesa Collier in
hmm
general, and also just how fitting these last 2 performances of hers have been. A weekend that honors Maya Moore. Friday night also honored Simone Augustus and Taj McWilliams Franklin on their Hall of Fame honors. Friday night was interesting because you look at 27 points and 18 rebounds. Anyone looks at that and goes like, "Oh, phenomenal game," but like the 27 points is, it wasn't a career high. It wasn't a 30 piece or anything like that. I haven't seen many games in my life, and I certainly haven't seen that many games in person where it was so clear how dominant someone was on the offensive end and defensive end of
hmm
the court simultaneously. Like the aura that Fee was generating on Friday was different. Like press row, normally it's just kind of like, we're reacting to plays a little bit and talking with each other.
hmm
It's like laughing at like, funny things the refs do or anything like that. But like Friday night, every time like Fee did anything, we were just like we look at Kent or Travis or
hmm
Andrew or any one of the people sitting around me, just go, whoa, wow. And then we were honestly all almost speechless. It's our job just to to talk and
Right.
just like
Right.
fire off takes about basketball, and we're sitting there just like, oh my god. And it's like we're watching like the elevation of a player who already was great and achieved some level of greatness, reaching another level of greatness in a way that's recognizable, but
hmm
still is like forcing you to question everything you thought you knew about the world in like
Yep.
profound ways. Um, I do love to just kind of like get in the nitty gritty of games and let my imagination run away with things. So for people who might not be as familiar with like my work or the way I like to think about basketball, like I'm, giving you that disclaimer here, but like that performance was just wild. And I was just sort of texting friends about how well she was playing and how dominant it was, and just being like, I don't understand what's happening here. Like this is greatness in real time while you're playing against A'ja Wilson, who I think is going to win the MVP and is deserving. But the MVP conversation before was like A'ja, and then you have, the rest of the field that includes Fee, and it's like, oh, like, yeah, Aisha's the MVP, but we got to give Napheesa Collier her flowers.
Right.
And now it's like, if you want to look at sort of a more, micro level of it, you can make an argument for Fee being the undisputed MVP of the league.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she'll win just based on like predicting how the voters work and how these things are decided. And I don't have a vote, but now I'm like, there's an argument to be made here for what Fee is doing as MVP. And I was thinking, sitting there trying to figure out what question I'm going to ask. Like, I was like, how do I just wanted to look at Fee.
Mm-hmm.
How?
Yeah.
How?
Just explain.
What? Yeah, exactly. Your thoughts. It felt special. And like, in this job, you have to watch a ton of games, and not every basketball game is created equally. And it's still, at the end of the day, you're watching basketball for money, and it's incredible. We're very lucky to do the work we do.
Right.
But I wanted to go up to Fee and just say thank you. That's honestly what I was thinking. There's one of my favorite books about sports ever written is a book called Soccer and Sun and Shadow by Uruguayan author Eduardo Galeano. And he starts it with an author's note where he states he's not a fan of any single team, and he calls himself just a beggar for good soccer, going around the world in stadiums and pleas, like, just a pretty move for the love of God. And he ends it with, when good soccer happens, I thank God for the miracle and don't give a damn which team or country performs it. As someone from Minneapolis, I don't agree with the first part of that, where like I love seeing Minnesota teams and players do incredible things, but sometimes you see great basketball and you just got to thank God for the miracle. And that's what Friday night felt like, where we've seen Fee play so amazing that of course she has this in her bag, but like seeing like the elevation where you have 4 Olympians on the other side of the court, 2-time defending champions, and Fee is so clearly the best player in this game right now. And there's not an answer for her. And every rebound was going to her. She was, running the floor, distribution well. She was passing when she should have, and taking the shot herself when she should have, and just the stars aligned for one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen. And it was like, that's the biggest takeaway of the weekend for me. As great as Maya Moore is, as great as Caitlin Clark is, as awesome the attention and energy towards women's basketball is, but go back and watch the full game, not just the highlights, the full game, and just watch Fee on every play. And you get to see a superstar becoming a transcendent player in real time. And that's, a really exciting, and just like, I'm just grateful that I was in the house for it. Like, I'm grateful that I got to see it. It was really, really just a marvelous performance.
Yeah, the last player on the Lynx that I can remember that can take over games like Napheesa Collier and just control games and, like you said, be that best player on the court was being honored Saturday night after the game, Maya Moore.
Her number went in the rafters.
Yeah, and to your point, like, seeing her be able to take a game over and just control it and own it from start to finish on both ends of the court is unbelievable. And in these last 4 games, even, coming out of the break, she's been phenomenal. But the last 4 games, going through the Indiana game, she's turned her game up to the completely next level. Like, I'm just looking at some numbers here. She's the first player in WNBA history to score over 110 points while shooting 70% or better through a 4-game stretch. That's unbelievable. And I mean, and that's just offensively.
She's not just posting up either. Like, she loves the mid-range shot. She's great in the post, but she's shooting threes too. Yeah. And so 70% from the field in that 4 games. Like that's
Yeah.
nothing to sneeze at.
No,
It's honestly insane.
that's incredible. And now I do think Asia Wilson will end up being the MVP, but you like you said, you have to make a case for Napheesa Collier now. Not just mentioning her in the MVP conversation, but she should be, if you're gonna, look at two people, I think it's Asia Wilson and then Napheesa Collier. And to me it should be a no-brainer. But I mean she could make a last, a late season push to get into
Right.
that conversation
And
even stronger. But
if they do end up as the 2 seed and Vegas
hmm
stays 5,
yeah,
it's not a stretch to say the best player on the team in second
yep,
it was more valuable than the best player on the team in fifth. And
right,
MVP, it's such a frustrating thing to discuss sometimes because it is objectively a regular season award.
yeah,
But then you hear these debates be like, well, what was their MVP moment? And then people bring up playoff games and like crunch
hmm
time and things like that. And we kind of it's one of the easiest debates for people to move the goalposts in
right,
talking about sports and sports awards and things like that. But
hmm
if Vegas kind of stays where they're at and they're fifth, which they're just as dangerous as they've ever been from that spot. Then if they're in first, I'm not trying to take anything away from them,
hmm
but if their regular season doesn't even translate to earning home court advantage in the playoffs, I mean, this is me trying to. I didn't go to law school, but this is me trying to be a lawyer and argue for the for the MVP
yeah,
award to be Napheesa Collier's. But that is like I think that's valid. If
hmm
you are just the fifth best team versus the second best team in terms of regular season wins and losses, I think that's who is more influential to
right,
winning basketball.
100%. I agree. I agree. Kind of looking forward to the rest of the year. We talked about this at the beginning of this team being title contenders, title, maybe some might say title favorites, whatever it may be, but they're right there.
Yeah,
What do you think will ultimately take place, down the stretch and maybe in the postseason for this team?
I do think they will make it to the semifinals and be very, very competitive. I was just about to say, if you're in Target Center and you look up to, the rafters and where Maya Moore is, fresh
Hmm
banner with her number 23 on it. If you look up at that and squint, you can see a number 24 hanging beside it someday into the future.
hmm
And if you look at the standings and squint, you can see the Lynx as the champions. And I think the way they're playing now, the need to squint is less and less, and it's just apparent. It's going to be tough though,
hmm
and you know New York assembled this team to win a WNBA championship, and
Right.
they haven't done it yet. So they're playing great basketball too, and they're gunning for it. Connecticut is just rough and tumble and miserable to play against for anyone, but the Lynx know that firsthand
hmm
from the 2 games this year and also the playoffs last year. Uh, and I think before the season, you could have said to anyone outside the locker room, but just following the team, like if they make it to the semifinals, it's a success. But this team won't be satisfied
hmm
with that at all. I don't even think they'd be satisfied with a finals appearance. It would be great and something to build on. But yeah, I think we will see the same type of commanding, beautiful brand of basketball that they've been playing, and they're going to be right there, down to the stretch. So
hmm
it depends on the matchups, but
Right.
if you are maybe if you're a casual Lynx fan and listening to this and you haven't been glued to the TV watching every game, like this is the moment now where like
hmm
you fully have to jump on the bandwagon
Yeah.
and watch what takes place down the stretch, because it's real. The chances of them raising their first championship banner, WNBA championships banner. I don't want to diminish the Commissioner's Cup because they did raise that banner this year, but it feels like something like 2017 could happen
Yeah,
again.
I
And
agree.
that you get that feeling when you talk to them, when you're around them. They're a pretty unflappable bunch. The chemistry that they talked about in training camp, I can say from just being an outside observer, but just someone who's around a lot, like it's real. Like that's not a cliche that they're just
hmm
saying like, oh, like you hear teams talk like we have great camaraderie. But that's something that started on day one of training camps as authentic as can be
Yep.
and has sustained through the whole season. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you can see that in the tougher moments and when other teams are making a run and whenever they're big and small forms of adversity. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think, health will play a big role as well. But if this continues, there's no reason why they can't win the whole damn thing. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's going to be very exciting, and it's going to be very very difficult for them as well, as there's a few other really really good teams in this league.
Mm-hmm.
But it is must see basketball down the
Yeah.
stretch. So the next 10 games will be great too, but I can't wait for the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's the best time of the year. But you know, uh, talking about, just or, kind of the title favorites or title contender side of things coming into the season. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I thought they'd be a top 3, 4 team.
Mm-hmm.
And even, throughout the first half of the year, that reigned true. I mean, they've been in the top three basically all year. But seeing the last 4 or 5, 6 games, coming out of the break, that pushed me over the edge where I
Yeah,
initially thought maybe they'd make it to the semifinals. Now I could see them making it to the finals. But
yeah,
to your point, or kind of like what you said, I agree with you that I think that Connecticut's going to be a tough one to get through. But if they can do that,
right.
it's who knows, anything
Yeah,
can happen in the finals. So it would be interesting. I'd
I
be
was
interested to
I,
see Target Center rocking.
yeah, absolutely. And I felt similar to you. I think there's a tier of Vegas, New York, Connecticut
Mhm.
as my top three teams. I was like, and I think the Lynx can be the fourth and get into the semifinals and
Yeah.
maybe play their way above that. So we definitely weren't the people who ranked them as ninth in the
Yeah.
preseason power rankings.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just been wild, and they're such a fun team to watch and
Yeah.
to cover. So
I agree.
the longer they go, the better it is for us, because I want more games and more time, and I know that's what the fans want as well. So
Absolutely.
it'll be fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Well, Terry, I appreciate you joining. I appreciate you chatting some links here in WNBA. And we'll definitely stay in touch, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
have to circle back with each other maybe once the playoffs get around, or once the playoffs wrap up, and see how right or wrong we were. So,
Right. Yeah. And see how long it takes you to find a parking spot on the
right,
ice, because
exactly.
that's
That's
an
oh my
indicator
God.
of a big game.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Terry, I appreciate you joining. We'll talk soon.
for sure. Thanks, Mitchell.
Thank you once again to Terry for joining the podcast this week. As I mentioned at the beginning, right before the podcast recording, Terry's phenomenal, very insightful, very knowledgeable, does a great job of covering the game. And if you are not following him, you should be already. But if you're not following him on social media or following his work at the Next, please do so. You will not be disappointed. He does a great job of covering the Lynx, covering the league. And he's been a joy to work alongside and get to know over the years. So thank you once again to Terry for taking the time and jumping on the podcast with me here this week. I also want to give a shout out to Jeremy Rushing, producing our podcast as I do every week. Give a shout out to Jeremy because he does such a great job, not only turning this podcast around in short time, but also making sure that I don't sound like a complete idiot, which is a very hard thing to do. So I appreciate you, Jeremy. And everything that you do for Hitting the Hardwood, and I've enjoyed this partnership since we've started this podcast a few years ago. Also, speaking of partnerships, if you or you know somebody who is interested in partnering with Hitting the Hardwood, send us a note. Email us at hittingthehardwood@gmail.com. I'd be happy to chat about what we can do, what the partnership would look like, and how we can help support each other and partner together to support women's basketball, support the Lynx, support the WNBA, whatever it may be. So shoot us a note, and we'd be happy to chat about what that might all look like and how we can help each other. With that said, I want to give a shout out to two of our partners who've been with us since day one. I really appreciate both Homage and Better Edge, both great outlets, great companies. Better Edge, I'll start with them. Better Edge is my favorite betting platform that I've used. And the best part is the people who work there. I love working with Greg, but the people who work at Better Edge and who are a part of that leadership team and just kind of the team over there, they're even better people. And they are very big supporters of women's basketball. And I've really enjoyed our partnership that we've had so far. So please check them out, betteredge.com, bettor edge.com. If you are a first-time user of Better Edge, you can go to betteredge.com/links, use the promo code LYNX, LYNX, and on your first deposit, you'll get $20 in free play. So if that's the convincing factor, if that pushes you over the edge, that is available to you. So please check that out and start using Better Edge because it is a phenomenal betting platform. Homage, as I mentioned, Homage is a vintage clothing outlet. They do a lot of great modern or current and vintage clothing items and gear, from t-shirts to sweatshirts to like I said, current logo wear to past teams, vintage gear. They do a really great job with coming up with different ideas, different concepts, and also usually have deals and promos quite regularly. So keep an eye out for Homage, HOMAGE.com. You can visit our Hitting the Hardwood website, and which you can find on all of our social media platforms. But visit the Hitting the Hardwood website, go to our partners tab, and if you click on one of those two links and then purchase something through it, it doesn't cost you anything more or less. But if you purchase anything through Homage, you help support Hitting the Hardwood to whatever extent that may be, or whatever the overall price of your purchase is. So please go check that out and help support Hitting the Hardwood if you can. Speaking of support, if you would be interested in getting exclusive content, exclusive news that you won't get anywhere else, early access to podcasts, bonus content, whatever it may be, there's a lot of stuff I'm not even covering or touching on. Please check out our Patreon page, join our Patreon community. I'm grateful for the people who are part of that community, and come join. We want you to come join the party. So you can join or find that at patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. Start a free trial, test it out, see if you like it. If you do, please consider supporting us in some way with one of those membership tiers. That support goes a long way in ensuring the longevity of this podcast and continuing, making sure that I can continue to do this on my end and providing this content to all of you. For kind of a behind the scenes, as this podcast is dropping, our Patreon users or patrons will have the full recording of the Maya Moore post-game ceremony for her jersey retirement, recorded from Saturday night at Target Center. So that's just one kind of behind-the-scenes thing on what exclusive content looks like. There's a lot of written content that's exclusive as well. So please go check that out, patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. Well, we're in the home stretch of the regular season. We as I mentioned, we have about 10 games left in the regular season. Getting down to the home stretch. We're almost to my favorite time of the year, playoffs. And it'll be interesting to see how the standings shake out the rest of the regular season, see if the Lynx end up staying in the 3 spot, if they can move up to the 2 seed, or what takes place specifically for Minnesota, but also for the rest of the league. There's going to be a tight race to the finish with those bottom seeds, 7, 8 seeds again, as we see every year. But teams are trying to jockey for positioning, trying to get into the playoffs or improve their seeding for the postseason. So it's a very interesting time. If you're not following the league, if you're not following the Lynx, now's the perfect time to do so, as Terry said in the podcast. No better time than right now. So jump on board. Let's enjoy the rest of the regular season and gear up for the postseason, because it'll be here before we know it, just a couple weeks away. So with that said, I appreciate you joining the podcast and listening to the podcast this week. And I hope you have enjoyed what we've seen out of the break, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the regular season. We'll talk to you soon.